Excuse me, David Guyette is from Muskoka, and he has served with the Children's Evangelism Fellowship Ontario for the past 10 years and as the area team director for the past 3 years. David's heart is to support local churches through CEF in reaching out to unreached children with the gospel, disciplining them and establishing them in local churches. He is married to Sarah, who was instrumental in writing the CEF summer curriculum, and they have 2 boys, Nathan, who is 4, and Joe, who is 2.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Small and mighty today. Okay.
And my name's Sarah. So there you go. Sarah.
Okay, so I have student notes here so that you guys can follow along. Now you will see there's a different name on there than what was in your brochure, and the reason why is that was the one that I did last year, and they never updated it from last year. So anyways, and so I will not be offended if you're like, look, that's not what I signed on for. If you want to go somewhere else, that's totally good with me. So I will give you a note right now, and you
No, you're stuck with us.
There you go, wonderful. Okay, so we're going to talk about summer ministry specifically to children. So I had an interesting conversation, a very long conversation this past week with a lady that said, I want to do summer ministry to the kids in my area. And I said, all right. So, do you know anybody in the area that you're in? She actually had a cottage and she wanted to do something there. And she said, well, no, I actually rent out my cottage most of the time, and so I don't really know anybody in the area. I said, well, are you connected to any churches or anybody in the area that knows any kids? Well, no, not really. I said, well, are you planning on getting to know your community to help to connect with them and so on? Well, no, not really. And so we kind of went on this for a long time, and I said, look, you know what, if you want to effectively reach your community, first you need to know your community, like you were saying. You know, you need to have those kids that you're saying, these are kids in my area that I already know that I want to connect with and effectively reach with the gospel. So we're going to talk specifically about summer and what does that look like. I'm going to give a lot of ideas and so on, and don't take any of them as definitive, as this is the only thing that you can do. But these are things that in my past 10 years of experience in ministry and in children's ministry that I've seen to be effective and to be helpful. The key in getting any type of summer ministry started is in prayerfully planning it out, taking it to the Lord and saying, Lord, would you bless this? You know, Psalm 127:1 says, unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain, right? If we say, oh, you know what, we're going to just come up with all these ideas and this is what we are going to do. You know what? My old director, he talked a lot about the parable that Jesus used about the vineyard, right? When he talked about the vine dresser and how he says, I am the vine, you are the branches, and apart from me you can do nothing. And he said it's a very definitive statement, and he says I don't really think it applies to everything. He says, in all reality, he says, we don't go through every single day praying, Lord, would you give me another breath so I don't die? Like, there's a certain element that God has his hands on our lives and nothing happens without his say-so. But he says, what I think that what Jesus is trying to get at here is you can accomplish nothing of any spiritual value without him. That we can put on great programs, we can even have tons of kids that come out to them, but nothing happens unless the Lord is doing it. And so first and foremost, we come to him and say, okay, Lord, how are we going to do this? All right, how are we going to reach these kids in our area? And so the first thing that I would say is we're going to look at several things that we need to identify. The first thing is the why, and that's your first blank there if you're following along there in your notes, is identify why. Why do you want to do this? Why do you want to have a summer ministry to kids? Why do you want to do VBS at your church or whatever you're thinking? And I would say if the answer is, well, it's what we've always done, that's probably not the best reason for doing summer ministry, right? Because a lot of times we can get stuck in a rut of, well, you know what, this is what we've always done. We've always done this type of VBS for this long on this week, and that's just what we do. And but if we look at, you know, what you're trying to accomplish, is that actually being accomplished? An example of that is when about 5 years ago, CEF Ontario, whose mission is to reach unreached kids, and is to look at the 2.3 million children in Ontario and see that 19 out of 20 of them will never step inside of a church. How do we reach those kids? How do we evangelize them, disciple them, and get them established into a local church? And so CEF had tons of ministries that we did. And it was honestly one of the things that it's so hard to explain to people what CEF is, because we do so many different things, right? There's so many different programs, and finally we kind of sat down and said, okay, what are our core values? What are the core values of CEF? And we went back to our mission statement, which says the mission of CEF is to evangelize boys and girls with the gospel of the Lord Jesus, to establish and disciple them in the Word of God and in a local church for Christian living. So it's 3 steps: evangelism, discipleship, and church integration. And so we said, okay, if a program that we do does not accomplish all those 3 things, it might be a good program. It might be a program that we're seeing a lot of kids come to, but it's not a CEF program, right? Because it needs to fit with the core values of what we are doing, and that needs to be the same for you and whether you're partnering with your church or whatever you're doing, thinking about, why am I doing this? And if it's just, well, because I think it's a good idea, it really needs to line up with those core values. And so what CEF did is they went through it and they looked at all these different ministries that we were doing and just started slashing them and saying, okay, this is good, this one's not, this one's good, this one's not. One of those was fair ministry. We used to do a lot of fair ministry around Ontario. And would probably get in front of around 4,000 to 5,000 kids through that ministry. It was a great ministry in that we had a lot of evangelism that happened, but there was no discipleship and there was no church integration. And so we said, well, you know what, it's great for evangelism, but ultimately it's not accomplishing the purpose for what CEF is here for. It might be a great ministry for a church to do on their own to get their face out in the community or something, but it's not a CEF ministry. So, my question for you is, if you think about reaching kids in your community and thinking about, okay, now we're going to shift our focus to summer, if I think, okay, we want to have a summer outreach to kids, what are, I've given you 3 spaces there, what are 3 things that you think, this is the core of why I want to do this, or this is the core of why my church should get behind this? Throw them out. What 3 reasons?
Kids are bored.
Kids are bored. They need something to do. Okay, they're bored during the summer, need something to do. Okay, great. Something else.
Babysitter.
Okay, they need a babysitter, all right? They need something to occupy their time. All right? Maybe not the best reason, but still a reason. Okay, something else.
Because it's different.
Sure. Yeah, you want to, because sometimes, like, we don't know if something's going to succeed unless you try, right? Yeah, give it a shot, see what happens.
neighbor friends, like they don't darken the door of a church, but they went to Bible CEF summer program because it was offered and it was free and it was entertaining and the kids went.
There you go.
And boy, they fell in love with the Bible as a
There you
result.
go. Fantastic.
And they can't afford to go to camp.
Yep, there you go. There's another
Yeah,
reason
there
they
is.
do it. There you go. Can't afford to go to camp.
Unfortunately, yeah, it's very expensive.
I babysit in the summer,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just understood that since I'm the pastor's wife, I'm babysitting your kids, they're going to come to PBS.
There you go. All right.
So if they need childcare that week, that's where they're going to be.
There you go, right? And so you might as well make use of that time. If you're going to have the kids there, you might as well have ministry that they're going and be part of, right? Anything else? Any other reasons? Why do summer ministry?
Because it's our calling.
It's a calling, right? It's to do ministry to kids is a calling. Matthew 18:14 says, Jesus says, "It is not the will of my heavenly Father that one of these little ones should perish." Right? When Jesus says it's not my Father's will, like that's a really strong statement. Right? It's not God's will that a child should go through his life and not be able to hear the good news of Jesus Christ. It's not God's will, right? We are called to do it. We have a lady that's been starting clubs in Huntsville and Novar down in our area, and she just has a heart for seeing kids reached with the gospel. And I was talking to her and saying, "Oh, you know, it's great that you can do all these programs and everything, and we're reaching more and more kids." And she says, "Yeah, the funny thing is, I don't even like kids." She says, "I don't even like teaching kids. They drive me up the wall." And I said, "Well, why are you doing it?" She says, "Because they need Jesus." Right? And that's why we do it. Sometimes it's not something that we say I'm particularly good at or something that I like. Sometimes it's just I'm expected to, because I'm the pastor's wife, that these kids are going to get dropped off on my door during the summer. Yeah, for sure.
So it's an opportunity to serve the Lord.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people are bored. I'm talking older people.
Yeah.
That need a service.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, my kids are grown, but now I have the grandkids, and my granddaughter's 9, and many times she has friends, you know, they have a sleepover, and so I said, well, ask them if they want to come to Sunday school with you. So it's, you know, this kind of range, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so you have that connection already there, right? Yeah, for sure. Here's some of my reasons. So if you look at, we're actually going to get back to that one a little bit, but here's 4 objectives that I see. 4 objectives. One is to evangelize kids. Summer is an amazing time when kids are bored. They're not in school, and so it's an amazing opportunity to actually get in front of more kids, right? And it's a time where to present the gospel clearly and to share it with kids that wouldn't normally hear about Christ. It's also great to encourage your church, right? To see, oh, wait a second, we can reach out to kids. To come to the end of a week of VBS or something and say, hey, you know what? We got to lead X amount of kids to the Lord. This is how many kids that came out that had no church connection before, but they came out and heard about Jesus for the first time. That is tremendously encouraging for the church because they can get discouraged. And I was talking to a gentleman last night who came, and I was telling him about CEF, and he was saying, he says, oh, you know what? I said, yeah, we're about reaching kids with the gospel, and he says, yeah, because nobody's going to church anymore. And I said to him, yeah, because 19 out of 20 children in Ontario will never darken the door of a church, will never set foot inside of a church to hear the good news of Jesus Christ. But hey, if we can be an effective tool to go outside the church and reach those kids, that's a tremendous encouragement to say, yeah, we can do this as a body of Christ to go out and reach the next generation. It also establishes the foundation for lasting fruit. It allows allows us a starting point to be able to connect with families, to be able to connect with kids, so that they can have so that we can have long-term impact with them. It's not about one time they come, they make a profession of faith, and we say, Lord bless you, we'll never see you again. It's long-term, it's discipleship, and then it's an opportunity to equip your workers. I worked with a lady for a long time in my church's Sunday school, and it was one of the most creative teachers that I have ever had the pleasure of working with, and just poured her heart into what she did. But every time we would be done finishing for that week, she would say, I wish I could be trained because I feel so inadequate. I don't feel like I know what I'm doing, and so on. And so we, as CEF, a big part of what we do is we train people and we train workers. And first time she went through some of that training for doing outreach, she's like, whoa, I can do this now. The funny thing is, she basically went out and kept doing the same thing that she was doing before, because she was doing a great job. But it was that encouragement that she needed when people are like, you know what, I can't teach kids, I don't know how. And to say, okay, well, let us walk with you through that. Let us help you with that. So those are some of the objectives that we have. Next thing, so that's establishing and identifying the why, looking at why do we even want to do this. The next thing is identify the demographic. There's next blank there for you. Identify the demographic. So looking at your area, and if you even think I have it centered around my church, I go to Harvest Bible Chapel in Bracebridge, and looking at, okay, where is the places that we want to impact? Where do we want to be reaching out to through the church? And so looking, and we said, okay, you know what? We have people, because it's country, it's out in Muskoka's fairly spread out. People are willing to drive fairly long distances to come to church and so on. So it's Engravers, Bracebridge, Huntsville. Those are our three major centers. Those are where the kids are. And so, okay, well, these are still fairly large city centers. Where do we find these kids? And the first thing that you got to do is you got to go where there's immediately opportunity. Like, what was your name? Sarah, you see, came and said, I've got 3 kids already, and they're coming over, and they need to know about Jesus, right? So start with where, don't go for the difficult thing, go for the path of least resistance, right? That's where the Lord is probably leading you to already, and so look and see, okay, is this going to be something that we're going to gear towards boys or girls? Like, are we going to make that distinction in the club? What age are we going to go? Are we going to gear things towards? And what background are these kids going to come towards? Because I think a lot of times as the church, we think, well, we need to be all things to all people all the time, right? And sometimes with kids events and summer ministry, that's the way we treat it. We think, okay, when we have these kids come, we need to have boys, we need to have girls, we need to have kids that are from 0 to 12 come out, and from any demographic, any area, and we'll just take everybody. And the thing is when you do that, it's like that. It's trying to hit a bullseye with a shotgun, right? You're trying to spread out so far and try and do so many different things that you aren't able to do the one thing effectively. A church that we've been partnering with CEF's partnered with a long time, helping with them with their summer ministry. They've done a day camp, and this year they're like, I don't know if we can do it this year because we don't have as many volunteers we've had in the past. A lot of our young people are off in college, and the next generation that's coming up, they're kind of young, they're still around 13, and so we can't leave parts of the program to them just yet. And I said to them, well, what's your age range? Well, we do 3 to 12 years old. I said, well, what if you limited that, instead of doing 3 to 12, do 7 to 12? And I said, you eliminate half of your needs, but then you only do 2 formal interviews with them and 3 references. Everybody goes through that. It doesn't matter if you're teaching or if you're just providing snack. Everybody goes through it because you just have that risk. And so making sure that you're protecting yourself, protecting your kids, protecting the ministry that you're doing, right? So it's a big headache and a lot of work, but honestly, it's worthwhile. It's worthwhile doing, okay? And then looking at how many volunteers are you going to need to run this program. And so we're going to look at some different options to see, okay, how many volunteers are you actually going to use? And that's what the next one, identify how it can bless and impact the community. Because a lot of times we get so laser focused on, we want to reach our community with the gospel, and so I just want to bring kids in so that I can sit them down and tell them about Jesus, right? And that's what we want. We want to share the good news of Jesus Christ with them. But if the program is not a blessing to the community, it's not going to last. You're not going to have long-term impact with them because they don't see the value to it, right? So here's some different options that are typically out there. I list 4. One is day camps. Day camps are amazing because they are a huge blessing to the community, right? It takes a lot of manpower to pull them off. You can limit the manpower that you need by limiting the age of the kids and limiting the number of kids that you have coming to it. But for people that are saying, my kids are normally in school and that's when I go to work, and during the summer they've got nothing to do, here's an opportunity to say, okay, you can drop your kids off at 9 and pick them up at 4:30 or whatever, and so they have a good chunk of time that they can go to work, and so it's a blessing to them. They say, and they look at the church in a different light and say, okay, you don't just want my kids to fill up your program, but you want to actually provide something that is impactful to the community, right? So I'm a big fan of day camps for that reason. If you can find the leaders to pull that off. Vacation Bible schools are good, but with VBSs, they're typically about 3 hours long, right? And the thing with VBS is they're very intensive and they take a lot of work, and unless they are already connected to the church, there's not a whole lot of incentive for the community to send their kids there, right? Typically, if you think about a VBS, and this is just generally, not necessarily indicative of everybody, but generally you're going to end up with 90 to 95% church kids at a VBS, whether it's kids from your own church or kids from somebody else's church that end up coming out. That's just what happens, because if you say to somebody, can you drop off your kids for 3 hours, you've limited it to a group of people where the mom is staying at home with the kids or somebody's staying at home with the kids that can pick them up after that period of time, right? And so it makes it a challenge, right? And so you've really limited the demographic that can make it out. Next one is backyard clubs. CEF is big about backyard clubs, and here's the reason why. With backyard clubs, you will typically end up with less kids. Okay, that's just the way it happens. You'll end up with you'll end up if a good sized backyard club is somewhere around 10 to 15 kids, right? So compare that to a church VBS where you can have somewhere between 30 to 50 kids, if not above and beyond that. Okay, so you have fewer kids, but where you have a 90% church kids to unchurched kids in a church VBS, when you do a community backyard club, that number flips around and you end up with 80 to 90% community kids coming to that as opposed to church kids coming to that, because it's right down the road. I'm willing to send my kids to something that they can walk to, all right, so I don't need to drive them. It's not a big issue to get them there every single day, and I already know these people in my community that are hosting it, so I'd be willing to send my kids there to that. And so and it's less threatening because it's not in a church, right? It's right there in the community. So there's that, and then on top of that, for people that are wanting to get connected into their communities, when they do these, it's an opportunity to meet neighbors, right? It's an opportunity to go out and say, hey, when these kids come out, I'm going to talk with the parents, and so I'm going to talk with the kids, and so that throughout the year, not just during the summer, I can have people over for dinner. We can do things together and be involved in our communities, and that is huge when it comes to thinking about, okay, what. And you know, they end up being like with CEF backyard clubs, they're typically about 2 hours, so they're shorter, but again, because of the short distance and it's local there in the community, there's more incentive for those kids to actually come out. And then fourth option, support a local camp. I hear you got a couple camps around here, and sometimes it's saying, you know what, we put so much time and energy into a program where we end up with all church kids coming out, and we do it because we've always done it. That's just why we do it. But you think about the time, energy, and money that you spend into a church program. I don't, please hear me, I'm not trying to bash church VBSs, because some of them are very effective and so on. But
You're exactly right what you said.
okay, all right, and I just want to make it clear, because I know as a guy from a parachurch organization that I'm not here to bash the church. We're here to support the church. Just want to put that out there. Anyways, so to say, okay, we typically will put out X amount of dollars, thousands of dollars towards a VBS program. What if instead we said, you know what, there's kids in our church, or there's friends of my grandkids or something that don't know Christ, and they've got nothing to do this summer. Well, why don't we as a church sponsor 5 to 10 kids to go to camp, right? And we think, well, you know what? We probably aren't going to get more than that many community kids coming to VBS right now.
Nice to do that.
Right? Yeah, and so I'm just saying, like, that's something to get behind and say, you know, let's look and find those specific kids and sponsor them to go to camp, and being intentional about that. All right. All right, that's the trick. Where CEF's dealing with that. So, I'll take a minute to do some shameless self-promotion here. CEF, our big thing during the summer months are summer missionaries, and so CEF's mission is to come alongside churches and help you guys have effective ministry to unchurched kids. And so when you have somebody that says, okay, I'm connected into my community, there's these kids that I want to reach, but I don't know how to do it. There you go. There you go. But I don't know how to do it. CEF says, okay, we will send you 2 summer missionaries that will come and lead a 2-hour program Monday to Friday for you. And you can do it anywhere. You can do it in a church, you can do it in a community center, you can do it in a backyard. Personally, I say community centers and backyards, your best chance to have the the best outreach statistically that CEF has seen. And when they come in ready so that all you have to do is invite kids and provide a snack for them, and then CEF comes in and looks after the rest of them. If it's the church that's saying, hey, we want to do this, it's $275 to do a backyard club. $525 if you want to do two in a single
About a
week.
soup kitchen.
Right? There you go. Yeah, for sure. You could do something like that at a soup
You need
kitchen.
more than two.
Yeah, there you go. You could do 10. Sure, why not? And so it kind of it helps encourage you as the church to say, you know what, I don't know exactly where to start when it comes to reaching kids in my community. It's a great place to start because it gets you connected into your community with some extra help there. So these are the students in red there. Those are our summer missionaries that we have. We usually have around 40 to 50 of them that go out every year, and we'll reach somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 kids with the gospel every summer. So it's a huge opportunity to be able to do it. And if your church, if you say, you know what, we really want to do this, my church is broke, they can't do it, they can't afford anything, CEF will waive the cost. Like, we just want the ministry to happen. We want the gospel to go out. So CEF's policy the summer, because sometimes it rains, and so we have a problem with those summer clubs because we don't want to cancel or anything like that. And so they said, okay, we're going to do it across the street, and we moved the club literally about 100 feet from one side of the road to the other. The next year, we had 20 kids come out, and not a single community kid came out to that club, simply because we moved it across the street to a church, and it was just that much more threatening or something. And so anyway, so I'm a big fan of the backyard clubs. Anyways, that's enough shameless self-promotion. Okay, so looking at how it can bless the community, and now have a strategic and intentional follow-up plan. That's your next blank there. Have strategic and intentional follow-up. So this isn't just a one-off thing that we're just going to share the gospel with them for that week, but we're going to intentionally connect with them throughout the year. We're going to do a barbecue. Maybe you can do it in the community, or you can even do it at the church to say, okay, you know what, you've come to that club, but we're going to do something at the church to make that connection there for them, so that they can see, okay, this is how this church is trying to bless the community. Plan events throughout the year in those communities, whether you're doing a club in that community, or you do community barbecues, or you just there's a guy by the name of Andrew Randall, and he's got a ministry called To See Beyond, and he's an amazing guy when it comes to this. He has a ministry that brings bouncy castles and carnival equipment to churches, but he's not just about renting this equipment to you. Everybody who comes in, he's got everything planned out strategically so that when they come and they sign in, everybody gets a bracelet, and if they don't belong to a church, they get a certain colored bracelet, and then everybody else that is connected to your church gets another colored bracelet, right? So that while they're walking around, they say, that's somebody I need to connect with, because they don't go to our church. I need to go and talk to that person. And so it's very intentional that way. He's got other stuff that's really good with that, and so on. Yeah.
Steel workers had all that here in the Sioux, they couldn't afford the insurance anymore for it. The liability was so high.
Yeah,
and shut it all down.
And see, he's got the insurance for it. It all falls under his insurance for it.
I know, but they had insurance too.
Oh yeah.
But it just got so costly.
Oh, for sure. It's not a cheap venture especially for him, but he runs it at cost. The guy lives off next to nothing. He's an amazing guy, but he's got everything. He does everything very professionally and everything. But that's Andrew Randall at To See Beyond Ministries. Okay. Start a community kids club and encourage your church families to connect with the families that attended. Say, okay, you know what, if you were a part of that club, be intentional, connect with those families. You know, we had this girl that's been coming out to camp for, I don't know, about 3 or 4 years. And my son Nathan, who's now 4, is just like best friends with this girl. She's 11 years old, but he just loves her, and she loves him. They're like camp buddies. And like, you know what? We need to have this family over. We have nothing in common with them except their daughter comes to our camp. So we decided to have them over, and it was one of the most amazing experiences that we had with them. It was amazing because we were able to connect with them and get to know their story. And she's telling us about how she got pregnant when she was 16, when she was in high school, and all the difficulties that she went through in her life. And the amazing thing is, the guy that was there with her was the guy who she had that first child with. They've been together for 21 years. I'm like, good for you. You know what? Don't know the Lord, but really are open to it and so on. And so, taking those opportunities to say, okay, I want to connect in with those families, and honestly, it's as easy as inviting those people over. Number 6, train your leaders. Equip them to do the ministry that they've been called to do. A lot of times we drop people off in the middle of something and we're like, Lord bless you, go and do it. And they're freaking out because of, I don't know how to do this, right? And I think that I don't think there's any way to completely eliminate that. Because if you step out in faith to serve the Lord, it's going to be difficult, it's going to be scary, and you're just not going to know what's going to be happening. But at least, to the best of your ability, train your workers. 4 things that you can do. 1, train them how to lead a child to Christ. And anybody, whether they're serving in the kitchen or they're your main teacher, they should know how to lead a child to Christ. Because my mom, who is like my camp cook and cooks for all these different events, there's always like 2 or 3 kids that all they want to do is go and hang out with the cook and talk with the cook. And that's part of her ministry. She's there hanging out and talking with those kids when they come to the window, right? And she's always talking about the Lord with them because she's confident in how to do that. So train your workers how to do that. Cast the vision for why they are there. A lot of people, they come to these things and they're like, oh, well, I'm here because I've got nothing else to do, or I'm here because I've been guilted into it. Somebody's told me that it wouldn't happen unless I showed up for it. And sometimes that's just how we need to get started. But our workers should not have that view of children's ministry long term. We should be casting the vision and saying, look, this is the church of tomorrow. This is your ability to connect with these kids. That, you know what, 85% of all born again believers come to know Christ before the age of 14, right? Jesus said, if you want to enter the kingdom of heaven, you got to become like a little child. Guess what? They're already little children. They're ready and able to receive the gospel. Train them how to talk with kids. And that kind of seems like, oh, that's training somebody how to talk? Well, yeah, but it's not as easy as it sounds for some people. One of the things that drives me nuts with some of the programs that I go to, I'll go and I'll be teaching, and then in the background there's about 5 or 6 volunteers. They're chatting it up together. And I'm like, be quiet, come and sit with the kids and engage with them. That's why we're here. We're here for the children and not to chat with each other. Okay, all right, I've done enough venting there. Child protection, do some training with that. I'm sure you guys are already doing that. And then finally, prayerfully do it. You know, if God is calling you to do some sort of summer ministry with kids, look at these things, plan ahead, maybe partner up with an organization like CEF or something to help get something like this off the ground, but then go and do it. don't just stop and be like, oh, maybe someday we'll get something going or something like that. Go out and do it. So, that's what I've got. Hope that's encouraging. I got about 5 minutes. Is there any questions that you had in regards to doing, whether it's summer ministry or children's ministry? I don't know everything, but whatever I know, I'll share. No? Covered everything. Look at that.
Good job.
There you
What
go.
was the price again for a student to come?
So you get 2 summer missionaries. It's $275 for a half day, so doing like one program in the morning. And it's $525 to do a full day. So if you're doing a day camp or 2 clubs.
And you have to billet them too, right?
And you billet them as well, and you drive them around as well. So you can, again, like, you gotta
But they
share
get
that
to,
around.
they travel expenses are included in that? Okay.
Yeah. Everything is all included in that. Honestly, and this is just me again shamelessly plugging CEF, but if you went to any other VBS publisher, you could not get a VBS kit.
I know,
For
that's
that
what I'm
price.
thinking.
And
That's
we-
a pretty cheap,
When we were
real
in
person.
Saskatchewan, we 2 of the 3 summers that we were there, we had CEF come in. They do fantastic.
Yes, well then they're trained and they're enthusiastic.
Definitely worth
And
it.
they're doing it all summer, not just
it's-
5 days.
Yeah.
Our workers are trained for 2 weeks down in Brantford, these summer missionaries, and so they've been trained well and they've been trained hard. I think, and again, let me shamelessly promote CEF, but CEF's children's ministry training is second to none.
Do you have a hard time placing the children, like the teenagers that are being trained? Is it hard finding communities to put them into, or are you booked up in advance?
I'm responsible this year for booking about 3 teams, which translates to around 25 different church connections and so on. I am 95% booked right now already.
So sign up quick, or you don't
sign
get
up
them.
quick if you're interested. I've got a couple specific weeks that I've got left, but other than that, so honestly, if you wanna get something, even if it's for next summer, get in touch with me in January.
Yeah,
My
excellent.
contact information